Hi everyone, this is Dan with Syntax, and today we're going to talk about Selenium Architecture. We're going to try to explain it as simply as we can. That's kind of really the best way to understand how Selenium works and how it really does its thing, especially when we're beginning. And a quick side note, guys, if you didn't watch our Selenium intro video, please go ahead and do so. We're going to be building upon pretty much what we learned in previous videos here on out. So just kind of get in that habit. It makes things a little bit easier to understand. So what we need to first understand here is one of our first topics. This is kind of how we move with Selenium. It kind of goes from start, comes over here, then comes back, and then back over here. So we'll talk about that and break it down just a little simply here in just a second. Now, again, first we have our Selenium client library. Now, you can think of that as your Selenium project within your IDE, whether you're using Eclipse or Visual Studio, whatever IDE you're using. Now, we're using Selenium and we're using Java. So in our first video, we had a quick example of coding pretty much a set of instructions to go to Amazon and perform some tasks, right? So that's what we went ahead in our Selenium client library. We can call it that, right? So once we hit ran, we went ahead and triggered our tests. Now, once we trigger our test, which is pretty much every set of instructions, all that code that I've written, right? It takes that code and then it goes ahead and it converts it into a JSON format. Now, with this JSON format, it goes ahead and gives it our drivers, right? It sends it to our browser driver. Now, I talked about that in the first video when I said that how we communicate with the browsers and how Selenium does its thing is it utilizes drivers, right? So now what this driver does is, let's say in that example we use Chrome, right? So if we're going to use a Chrome browser, that's what we want to use, right? We want to go to Google Chrome as part of our automation. We're going to use a Chrome driver for this instance, right? So went ahead and had my code. It took my code and compiled it and put it into a JSON format as we just explained, and it went ahead and gave it to our Chrome driver. Now, for as many browsers as we have opened, it has its very own driver, okay? This is kind of a quick note. Now, the browsers, right, our browser driver communicates directly with the actual browser itself. So now that it's taken pretty much our code, right, our set of instructions and what we want it to do, our driver takes that, gives it to the browser itself, and that browser, in this case Google Chrome, is going to go ahead and follow those set of instructions that it received from the driver that was written on the JSON format here, this JSON file that came from our local machine, our code. Now, once it goes ahead and as it's completing our tasks and our set of instructions, whether it be, click on this or maybe get the text of something, whatever it may be, it's going to go ahead and perform those tasks and then give us a response. And what it does is it goes ahead and gives a response to our driver, and then our driver converts that response back into a JSON file, right? A JSON format. And that JSON format is going back into our local machine, and it'll go ahead and give us a readout of what happened, right? Whether it be we're using a graphical user interface, whether we're doing any kind of reporting, and we'll talk about reporting later on, whether we printed something out in the console, whatever it may be. We went ahead and sent our commands. Driver took it, gave it to the browser had done the commands, sent it to the driver, and the driver put it back into a JSON format and gave it to us so we can see the commands and see how it unfolded. And that's kind of real quick Selenium architecture and how things work, right? So we have our client, we have our JSON, and we have our drivers. And pretty much, as we talked about, the drivers receive our instructions in the JSON format and gives it to the browser, and then all the way back. And that's a quick, easy example and explanation on Selenium architecture and kind of how it does its thing. All right, guys, well, that's it for this video. Happy coding, and we'll see you next time.